on Christmas Day, I dealt with my first suicide. So it was during the day, probably about 3 o'clock. And I was supposed to be getting, it was about noon, so I was supposed to be getting off at 3 o'clock. I ended up being on until 6, 7 o'clock that night, dealing with everything that I had to deal with. And it did affect me a lot, because even now, this is going to be my 4th Christmas. And every Christmas I still see and think about this victim. So it's one of those things that I try to know. I know it's coming because I see his face every Christmas, and Christmas is supposed to be a joyous time for families and stuff like that.
Growing up, I was surrounded by many family members who served as police officers, one of them being my father. He was someone I looked up to dearly, not just because of the way he cared for his community, but the way he protected his community with such passion. Unfortunately, my father passed away due to a tragic accident in 2021. Throughout his years of serving, he developed severe PTSD and trauma. He turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms, which led to an unhealthy mental state. In honor of him, I would like to dedicate this film to him. I would do that by trying my absolute best to spread awareness on how important mental health is. It is an officer's job to protect and serve their communities. They keep us safe from crime and danger. Being an officer means you have to be willing to save someone else's life before yours. You have to maintain a strong mindset and be brave. They are praised for saving the day and their accomplishments, but no one speaks on the things officers have to go through in order to achieve those accomplishments, or how it may affect them. But how did this connection come to be? Let's take a look at the history behind it. First, we have the Navajo Long Walk. Navajos saw threatening omens. January 1864, Canyon de Chelly seemed invincible to Navajos. The Red Rock Canyon carried spiritual and strategic meaning. Navajos knew soldiers were coming. Crops were destroyed in the summer and fall. Their sheep were killed or taken. This policy was planned to make Navajos surrender. There would be consequences for millions of Native people who lived there. This was a removal act. The U.S. Army had the indigenous people walk from their homeland to Fort Sumner at Bosque Redondo, which was 300 miles away. They walked for about 18 days, and hundreds of them passed during. Since this was a forced displacement and oppression, communities today feel targeted and oppressed by law enforcement. This may create the feeling of mistrust and fear towards law enforcement, just like the trauma the Navajos experienced during the removal act. Historical trauma events like this can cause a collective memory that gets passed down through generations. It also affects the way a community can act towards an officer. Next, we have 9/11. On September 11, 2001, 4 terrorists attacked the Twin Towers in New York City. During this, almost 3,000 people died. Victims in this situation who were above the hole in the building created by the plane were jumping out of the building in fear of burning. It was a time and event in history that everyone remembers where they were and what they were doing when this happened. This caused PTSD, anxiety, as well as trauma for survivors, law enforcement officers, and even people that were not present during. After 9/11, security measures and law enforcement presence increased significantly. This can put stress on an officer as they may feel instantly pressured to prevent similar attacks, which can lead to mental health issues. Next, I have the Navajo Code Talkers. During World War II, the Japanese had broken all the codes sent over radio waves. This caused the Marine Corps to reach out to indigenous Navajo men who were fluent in both their language and English. They asked Navajos because their native language is complex and largely unknown to an outside audience. This helped them create codes to communicate while protecting their operational plans. Some Navajo soldiers did experience war firsthand, but others who stayed back to help create the codes experienced what it was like to see and be around other soldiers who were stuck in a traumatic state of mind. This relates to my topic through the service and the psychological impacts on their roles. Soldiers face significant trauma from wartime experiences, just like police officers face trauma due to their duties. With this information, I decided to interview Mr. E to get his thoughts behind my research.
Hi there, my name is Herman Indito. I am the Navajo language teacher here at the Santa Fe Indian School. Navajo language from beginning to Navajo 102 is what I teach, so good to see you all. In training purposes, they are similar, related, because I've seen how the Navajo Nation Police Academy is operated. So if it would have been written, I'd say it would have been compromised. Somebody would have been studying this during this war, in between the world wars possibly. So it would have probably been compromised. But most of the time we see petroglyphs paintings, and those are just symbols and stuff. So really, maybe in that some kind of sense, it made it hard to decipher. So yes, it would have made a difference. Law enforcement, with the law enforcement community, yes, because it does involve casualties, it does involve weapons, in all kinds of sense, through vision, through mental, through hearing. So in similar ways, yes, the duties, they are with the tools and what they carry and what they do, yes, they do have a connection. And then with the trauma, yes.
Following that, I have World War II. World War II was sparked by Adolf Hitler's invasion of Poland, which caused Great Britain and France to declare war on Germany, and that was the beginning of World War II. This was the deadliest war in history. 70 million served, 17 million lost their lives, and 2.5 million of those people were Native Americans. Our Indigenous people fought and served our country. They developed severe mental disorders that still affect them today. This connects through the high levels of stress, life-threatening situations, and the psychological impact on their duties. Both have served roles that require them to confront danger and violence, leading to similar mental health issues. Lastly, I have COVID-19. In December of 2019, a virus was discovered and it was making people severely ill. On March 11th of 2020, it was no longer considered an outbreak, it was considered a pandemic. This caused schools and public facilities to close down, and it caused severe mental health issues to some people. This could be due to not seeing their family enough, losing their loved ones, or being isolated for long periods of time. More than 1 million people have passed away due to COVID-19. Doctors were witnessing patients coming in and out of hospitals due to this virus. They even witnessed losing their patients. Doctors are much like officers in a way. They would do anything for their patients, even if it meant putting their own mental health on the line. During the pandemic, police were put under a lot of pressure. They faced challenges such as enforcing public health orders, dealing with high-end public anxiety, and managing increased incidents of domestic violence. These added-on responsibilities, along with the risk of catching the virus, took a mental toll on officers. Over the years, these policies have changed. Now we see the impact of those changes in the way things are handled today with the current state of the issue. I decided to research an article called NHS North Cumbria Talking Services. It involves a former officer who goes by the name Darren. He realized the true importance of mental health after having a traumatic experience of his own. It impacted him in many different ways. He took on the role of being chair in CNTW NHS Trust. With this organization, he offers services where officers can turn to and have someone to talk to. He is still looking for many ways to improve his services. This connects to my topic because he is building new coping mechanisms for officers. This is something I would like to do with my SHP. Taking their feelings into consideration is something that I think is important for officers as well. This article talks about how officers are really left with trauma after experiencing something out of the ordinary. Creating an organization where officers can turn to and have someone to listen to them is a helpful coping mechanism. The next article I read involves Oneida Police Department. They experienced a tragic death caused by suicide. It left a sad feeling in their community. They set up wellness groups for those who are struggling with mental health. They are also focusing on certain reservations where suicide rates are high. The police officer was most likely experiencing mental disorders and didn't know how to cope with it. Putting up mental health groups shows that they care for their community and they are doing what they can do to provide help. While the current state of the issue remains a significant challenge, it is crucial to recognize the role that government organizations play in both shaping and implementing policies aimed at resolving these issues. I decided to look into the American Counseling Association. This is a nonprofit organization. Professional counselors can apply, and they can rely on them for guidance and support. This was founded in 1952 by a merger of 4 small organizations. They provide education, community, and professional development opportunities for over 60,000 members. That includes counselors and counselors in training. Next, I decided to look into the Department of Public Safety. Although this is not an organization, the Department of Public Safety can play a vital role in supporting mental health by addressing how public safety systems interact with individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. Now that we've discussed the underlying issue, let's go over global connections. The first community I decided to focus on is gun violence. Gun violence is influenced by these main factors, with women being the primary victims in domestic shootings. Despite these issues, traditional views on guns continue to dominate mainstream discussions. Addressing health equity and gender equality can lead to lasting peace. Gun violence intersects with mental health, crime, law enforcement, inequities, poverty, education, and cultural issues, which may explain why it remains under-recognized by global health organizations. A new office led by Kamala Harris has been created to address gun violence, focusing on laws to reduce harm and create long-term solutions. Officers often deal with violent situations, including shootings, which can take a toll on their mental health. The stress and trauma from these situations can lead to problems like anxiety and PTSD. This can also affect how they do their job, make decisions, and interact with others. When their mental health is supported, they're able to handle tough situations, reduce violence, and keep themselves and their community safer. The second community I chose is culture. This investigation takes place with the Navajo PD. The first investigation took place on September 22nd, 2 months after the first report was received. Navajo PD set up 3 listening devices just to hear nothing. A second investigation was launched on November 2nd. They wanted to start during the day to see if they could spot tracks, but they did not find anything unusual. There had been reports of animals being killed, but nobody knew what the cause was, so they took precautions. Everyone heard the howl and decided to follow it. They were led to a cave with the dank animal smell. There was no sign that anyone had been there. They noticed that there was no sign of wildlife, not even birds chirping. They decided to head back. No one was talking about what they had just heard or discovered. The reports stopped coming in and the howling stopped as well. This leads the case to remaining a mystery, but was explained as the most unusual thing they had ever done. This connects to my topic because it proves my point of we don't know what they experience at work. Police leave their traditional life behind to protect their communities, but somehow it still finds them. They deal with a lot of crime on reservations and even people hurting their community spiritually. It may be hard to solve things like this, but they are still willing to try to put a stop to it. Lastly, I decided to focus on domestic violence. Domestic violence is a common but often misunderstood crime that police frequently respond to. By learning about it, understanding best practices, and knowing available resources, officers can better handle these cases with care and expertise. This article highlights key information officers need and the importance of having a clear domestic violence policy to support victims effectively. The passage highlights the emotional strain that domestic violence cases can place on both victims and officers. Law enforcement officers may experience mental stress or frustration from dealing with victims who are upset, scared, or distrustful. This can lead to emotional fatigue, burnout, or challenges in providing effective support to victims. Understanding and addressing these factors is crucial for officers' mental health, as repeated exposure to such challenging situations can contribute to stress affect their overall well-being. Given this information, I decided to take action. My first action plan took place on November 8th, 2024. I created a list of questions about coping mechanisms for my family members to answer. For the last question, I asked them to draw a picture and explain how it made them feel. I chose to do this with my family members because we have all witnessed the hard times of officers. I chose this as my action plan because I want to work toward different and healthy coping mechanisms that officers can turn to. Engaging in drawing can help you focus on the present moment. It requires attention to detail, which can pull your mind away from worries and promote mindfulness. My second action plan took place on February 20th, 2025. I chose to take a walk with my classmates to the bakery across the street from our school. I chose to take a walk because I feel that storytelling can be used as a coping mechanism. It provides an outlet for them to express and process their experiences. It can reduce the burden of holding in intense emotions. A walk is a good way to put this coping mechanism to use because walking triggers the release of endorphins.
Hello, my name is Rayanne Gutierrez, and I am the mother of Adriana Gutierrez. I noticed it when I was pregnant with our son. He would keep a photo album of car accidents, other cases he handled. Some accidents were fatalities. They weren't pretty sights. I had came across it one day and I was looking through it, and there were some pretty gruesome pictures. I had asked him why he kept it, like why did he keep these pictures? And there was also pictures of child abuse, elderly abuse, and he said it was the way for him to cope because he was coming into fatherhood, and this was his chance where he could actually be there and raise his child. And it was his way to cope with what he went through. And I asked him, like, but why would you keep these photos? And he really didn't have an answer. He just said it was a way for him to cope, to look back and see, what if this person lived, and then it was I wonder what happened to this child that I helped get out of this bad situation. I did try talking to him. You know, he drinks a lot, and it seems like the alcohol would soothe his pain, but it only lasted for so long, and then he'd, have to go back to work and deal with all those issues again. Like, okay, I'm back at work. What am I gonna encounter tonight? And I would always just, he would go to work and I'd just say, okay, I would tell him I love him, and I would, be safe, and I'll see you when you get home. Or there were times we did work together and I would go home before him, and I just, wish he got the help. He would talk to somebody. At first, I thought he just did it occasionally. And as we got further into our relationship, I noticed it was an everyday thing. Got home on his days off. He wouldn't interact with people. He would sleep all the time. He'd spend his days off sleeping. He would drink a lot. And I would ask him, let's go here, let's go there, let's do something. And I think towards the end of our relationship was when it got bad. There was really nothing I could do to help him.